To make your Kitbot electronic system, you'll need a power distribution board, your Serial 2 with 3 modules, your analog breakout board, your digital sidecar, your wireless bridge, your 120 amp breaker, and your other circuit breakers. For this video we're using 2 Talon motor controllers, but you can use whatever motor controllers you want as long as they're legal. Your PWM cables, 6 gauge wire, 10, 14, and 18 gauge wire, Anderson connector, 12 volt to 5 volt converter, signal light, camera, ribbon cable assembly, and your smaller parts, spade connectors for your motors, breakers, serial power connector to go into the power distribution board, Wago connectors, jumpers, and your 6 gauge wire terminals. Before you attach any electronics to your robot, you'll need to cut a piece of either plexiglass or wood to fit your robot. We made this piece of plexiglass to fit the long Kitbot from 2013. The piece of plastic fits on just like this, with the 4 holes on each side towards the front and the single hole towards the back. Before you start attaching any components to the board, you need to figure out where they're going to go. First thing, you'll need to place your power distribution board and 120 amp breaker. Now we actually made a mistake when we put the 120 amp breaker so close to the power distribution board. We have to use these terminals to connect the power distribution board to the 120 amp breaker. And in the position we had it before, it was just too short to even fit these 2 connectors. So make sure you put it at least 3 inches away so you have enough space to put the connectors. Our Talons, digital sidecar, serial, and 12 volt to 5 volt converter. Be sure that your 120 amp breaker and positive terminal of your power distribution board are facing towards where your battery is going to be attached to your robot. You want to put your motor controllers so their power inputs are facing towards the power distribution board. This will make it so you only have to use a tiny bit of wire to power them. It's usually a good idea to have the serials power in next to the power distribution board's power out. Place the 12 volt to 5 volt converter right next to the 12 volt output down here on your power distribution board so we don't have to solder any extra wires. Each layout will be different depending on what type of robot you make and how much room you have for electronics. Now we can attach the components to our board. Your kit of parts will include this. It's kind of like Velcro, but it's called dual lock. You don't have to have 2 sides, it just fits together like this. We put it on the bottom of each piece and on the board. The easiest way to line stuff up is to take your dual lock and put both of the pieces together. Then take one side off and attach it. Make sure it's pressed down well. Now peel these off. And then make sure it's square and stick it onto your board. Push it down to make sure it's secure. Then pull on it to make sure that it doesn't come off. Now we'll connect the 12 volt to 5 volt converter to the power distribution board using a Wago connector. First, put the Wago connector into the power distribution board, and using a flathead precision screwdriver, open up the little window on the Wago connector. Then slide the red wire from the 12 volt to 5 volt converter in. Now take the black wire that's adjacent to the red wire on the 12 volt to 5 volt converter and insert it in the Wago connector the same way as you did the red one. You can test these connections by tugging on the wires. If they don't come out, you have a secure connection. Now we'll wire power from the power distribution board to the C-reel. To do this, we will use 18 gauge wire. You can use as small as 20 gauge wire, but this comes in your kit of parts. You'll be connecting from here to here, so see how long your wire needs to be. Just cut your wire. Make sure both of your wires are the same length. Then strip off a small amount from each side, about that much. Then twist at each side of the wire to make sure that you won't get any straggler wires going and shorting out places. Now take your connector off. Might need to unscrew it a little bit. Now put your red wire into the V on your 4-terminal connector and tighten the wire down. Pull on it to make sure it doesn't come out. Then put your black wire in either of the C connectors and tighten it down. Then put the connector into your power distribution board and screw it down. Now take the other side of the black wire and put it in the C on the connector that's in the C reel and tighten that down. Then put the red wire in where it says V and tighten that down. And then screw the connector onto your C reel. And now you're done. Now we'll connect our digital sidecar to the power distribution board. First, take another Wago connector and put it into the power distribution board. We'll use a 20 amp breaker for the power distribution board. You want to put it in right here. So we'll power these 2 terminals on the PD. Then we need to make a red and a black wire to go from the power distribution board to the digital sidecar. So it'll be about that long. Now strip off about 1/4 inch from each of your wires. Make sure none of the little bits go in your electronics. Now twist all the wires. Now we'll attach the wire to the power distribution board. Put in a precision screwdriver and pull up, then insert your wire. Now release. You can test it by pulling on it. If it doesn't come out, you have a good connection. Now look on the digital sidecar to see the polarity of the connector. You can see on the right is positive and on the left is negative. So first take the black wire, the negative wire, put your screwdriver in, and open up a little window on the Wago connector. Then put your wire in. Then do the same thing for the red positive wire. Tug on each of the wires to make sure it's in securely. Now we'll install the analog breakout board onto the C-reel. Just take the analog breakout board and push down. Then you'll need a jumper. Take the jumper and put it on the 2 outside pins right here. This will allow your programming to see how much battery you have left on your robot. Now we must power the analog in breakout board with 12 volts from the power distribution board. So put a Wago connector in, then figure out how long you need your cable to be. Cut and strip the wires the same way as you did before. Make sure you twist the ends. Then put your positive wire into positive place. And your negative wire. And where the negative wire goes. Make sure they don't come out when you tug on them. Insert a 20 amp fuse in your power distribution board. Then insert your red positive wire. Then tug on them to make sure they don't come out. Now we'll wire our talons. Each talon requires its own 40 amp breaker. You can look at the lightning bolt to see which connectors the 40 amp breaker will power. So we want one here. And here. So we're powering these 4 terminals. Powering our motor controllers requires 10 gauge wire, the white and black wire that comes in your kit of parts. To wire the talons, we need these spade connectors. They fit under the screws on the talon. I'm going to assume you watched my how to crimp wires video, so I will not show you how to crimp these, just how they go on. Now we intentionally put the talons very close to the power distribution board, so that we would have very short wires. Use a larger screwdriver to put in these wires. Tug on the wires to make sure they don't come out. Now use a Phillips head screwdriver to attach the spade connector. Make sure you put the positive wire where it's labeled with the red cross. And now you've connected your talons to power. Now we'll wire the signal light. You'll need one of these cables that has the 2 wires. First, you'll need to cut off one of the ends. Then take the other end, separate the 2 wires, and cut the red one off. You'll need this little red wire. Then strip this end of the wire and strip each end of the red wire you took off of the other end of the connector. And now twist all of the wires. Now take your black wire, put it into the end terminal and screw it down. Tug on it to make sure it doesn't come out. Now take your short red wire, fold it like this. If you stripped off too much, you can fold down the ends like so. Then put this wire between LB and LA. Then put the other red wire that's connected to the cable and put it into LA. And then screw the last 2 screws down, LA and LB. Make sure they're nice and tight and then tug on each wire and make sure it doesn't come out. You've now wired your signal light. The signal light plugs into your digital sidecar right here. It's labeled with positive and negative. Put the red wire on positive and the black wire on negative. There you go. Now put this somewhere on your robot that can be seen by anyone on the field. Now we'll wire the radio. To do this, we need to cut the power adapter that comes with our radio. So we get just this end and a cable. Now strip off about 1/4 inch of the adapter's wire. Separate the wires a little bit and then twist them. Now we'll connect the 12 volt to 5 volt converter to our cable here. Strip off just a little bit more from each side. Now we'll use butt connectors to connect these wires to these wires. Make sure you have the right size butt connector. Identify which wire has the white line and make sure it's twisted. Then put the butt connector on and crimp it. Then connect the yellow wire to the white striped wire. Then do the same for the other wire. Pull on each wire and make sure it's a secure connection. Now we'll use PWM cables to connect each Talon to the digital sidecar. If you look on the Talon near the PWM port, you can see a little B. That's the side the black wire will go towards. So take your PWM wire, male side, and put it into your Talon like this. Now feed the other end through. Look on your digital sidecar and see where the wires will go. It has signal, power, and ground. Ground is black, signal is white. So we'll put the cable like this into 1 and 2. So this one goes in 1, and the next Talon will go in 2. So just do the same thing. Then plug this one into 2. Now we'll use zip ties to organize the wires. Then tuck your wires in somewhere out of the way. Use your flush cutters to cut the tail of the zip tie. Now we'll attach the digital sidecar to the C-reel. Take the female end of your ribbon cable and put it onto your C-reel. Now attach the male end of your ribbon connector to the digital sidecar. Check to make sure this cable is fully inserted by looking at the screw holes on the side and making sure they're flush with the bottom of the connector. Some small screws are included in your kit of parts. Use these to secure your analog breakout board and each side of your ribbon cable on your C-reel and on your digital sidecar. Now use the smaller screws to secure the ribbon cable to the C-reel and to the digital sidecar. Now we'll make the power connector for your camera. First, take the power adapter and cut it off close to the wall adapter. We want to strip quite a bit of the wire, so just push it out, and we want about that much stripped off. Then just use the same strippers and strip off about that much wire. Now we put these wires in the 5-volt Wago connector. Tug on the wire to make sure that it's a secure connection. If the wires don't come out, you have a secure connection. Now we'll make the wire that goes in between the power distribution board and the 120 amp breaker. This cable will be different lengths depending on how far away your 120 amp breaker is. In our case, we need almost no wire to connect them. Now that we've figured out how long we need the wire, we can crimp it. So first cut your wire. Now because our connectors are so close together, we need to strip off most of the insulation. I use a knife for this. It may not be the safest method, but you have to do it somehow. Now just pull the insulation off. You can do this with a stripper if you need to. Now that it's stripped, put each of your terminals on here. Now we'll use this cheap $18 crimper we got from Amazon. Just take the part and lift up like this. Put it in, about centered. Make sure it's right centered on the part, and hammer. And it should give you a good crimp. Pull on it to make sure it's a good crimp. Then do the other one. Now you should have 2 good crimps. Now we need to crimp the same terminals onto the Anderson battery connector. Just do the same thing you did before. Make sure you can't pull it off. And do the other one. Now we want to cover this exposed metal with the electrical tape included in your kit of parts. Now cover the red lead of your battery cable with electrical tape. And cover the negative one with black tape. There you go. You'll need 2 socket heads, one 10mm and one 7/16. You use the 7/16 to take the nut off of the 120 amp breaker. Use the 10mm to take the nut off of the power distribution board. And take the lock washer off. Now take the part we made earlier and put it on. You may need to move around your 120 amp breaker just a touch to get it on all the way. Now tighten down your nuts. After you put the lock washer back on top on the power distribution board. Just don't tighten this down with a drill because you can break it really easily. Just tighten it down by hand until it's snug. Now put the little protective cap back on and you've got this attached. Now to attach the battery leads. For the positive lead, we must take off the nut from the 120 amp breaker. Now switch to your metric bit. Now you're almost done with your electronics. We use the 120 amp breaker as the main on and off switch of our robot. To turn your robot on, you pinch this reset switch, and to turn it off, you press on this red button. Now just reattach your signal light and you're done with your robot. Congratulations!